I'm now calling to order a regular meeting of the City Council, Tuesday, March 11th, 2025 at 7 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Council President Rogancy.
Here.
Vice President McGee.
Here.
Councilmember Boyke.
Present.
Councilmember Noonan.
Present.
Councilmember Lafferty.
Here.
Dwyer is here. Madam President, we have a quorum. Secretary Moore is absent.
Motion to excuse the absent member.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Member excused. Next item, Mr. Secretary.
Number 4, adoption of the consent agenda. So moved.
Support Lafferty.
Discussion, anyone? I want to move what was J, which is the resolution to sell vacant property, to the regular agenda.
4J is removed.
Where are you going to place it?
Does that on the next set?
That should be
Oh,
with the
thank you,
agenda.
thank you. Any other discussion? I'll call the question. Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Rogan C is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
5, adoption of the agenda. So moved with discussion.
Support Lafferty.
Discussion, Mr. Secretary.
What was item 4J on the consent agenda will move to 13I.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
Calendar of pending matters. Calendar motion to receive and file.
Support Lafferty with discussion.
Discussion, Mr. Lafferty.
Thank you. I'd like to remove item Land Bank Authority appropriation from February 11th, as that has been received and is on our present agenda. And as a note, I will be asking at the next meeting for an update of, from the Warren Police Department relative to the updated situation at the Bush Library branch after it has reopened full-time.
Are you adding that item to the calendar?
I don't want to add it to the calendar just as a notice for the future, for the next meeting, just as notice so they have time to prepare.
Excellent. Any other discussion? I will call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
7, approval of the bills, the general revenue funds. So moved.
Support Lafferty.
Discussion? Hearing and seeing none, I'll call the question. Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
Approval of the bills of the water and sewer systems. So moved.
Support.
Support Noonan. Discussion? Hearing and seeing none, I will call the question. Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
8, audience participation, agenda items only.
Good evening. Members of the audience who would like to address the City Council this evening may do so by filling out the audience form located on the right side of the stage. Looks like there's some new faces here, so I will just a reminder for folks that they have to write their name or address on the form or give it at the podium. We have 3 minutes for audience items here and then 3 minutes at the end of audience for general topics. You can speak at both. First up is Lori Harris.
Hi, Lori Harris. I'm sure it won't surprise anybody that I want to talk about marijuana. As a nurse and following research and reports that come more of a scientific matter, marijuana is not harmless. And I understand that 12D to amend the marijuana ordinance, the changes that were made, instead of limiting dispensaries, there's going to be unlimited. And I also realize that the market is saturated and it's, not going as gangbusters anymore. There's too much competition. I understand that. But how about if you have one by your house for 7 years, right next door, where they don't want to change the filter, where you smell it all the time? I mean, this is ridiculous. I understand everything that's going on. I still think marijuana is not a harmless product. So I'm distressed by this decision. I understand it probably has to be made, but I'm still very unhappy. And unhappy to know that other cities can not have any or have limits, and we're going to let this happen in our city. We already, if people in the city drive around by Groesbeck, 10 and Hoover particularly, the smell is so bad. Like every day they could go and smell it and write a ticket, and it doesn't happen. The person next door to me doesn't pay the taxes, still gets a rental license, and grows illegally in the house. It just doesn't make sense. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the renewing of the millage for the police and fire, and I heartily support our police and fire department, but we are not using the money that we've already paid in our taxes to hire the appropriate number of police. And maybe the fire department is okay right now, the police department is not. So why are we going to renew a millage when we're not using the money? And this goes back to the HR department and the terrible job they do at recruitment, following through, and hiring. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Greg Donahoe.
Good evening. I'll build on Ms. Harris's comments. The proposed change to the marijuana ordinance is simply uncalled for. There has been no public discussions, no public hearings, no sense of where an unlimited amount may be located. I can tell you they will be disproportionately located in economically distressed and diverse areas as opposed to more well-to-do areas, and the impact on the city. It simply does not make sense. If the explanation comes out that this has something to do with a lawsuit, all of you should push back hard on that. It usurps your role as legislators and our role as voters. This is, whether or not we're even going to have retail establishments, is a question that should be put to the voters. The state law enabling this allows that. We should be heard on if we even want them. If we do, then by all means, craft legislation that is appropriate for the city, sets an amount of locations, and gets it done the right way. But let the voters be heard. The mayor is willing to ask for a millage to be put on simply by going through this body. Do that service to us. Let us be heard on it and can be on the same ballot as the millage for the police and fire renewal will be. It is wrong to do legislation this way, slide it into a lightly attended early spring agenda with hardly notice and hardly any discussion ahead of time. I implore you to remove the marijuana item or table it to a different time and then have a series of public hearings at a minimum, if you won't put this on the ballot, to hear what the public wants. All sectors of the public. I'm aware that many of my fellow citizens approve of this and want that. Fine. But and further, if this is being motivated by the tiny bit of money some cities got from the state pot last week, that should not be a motivation at all. I'd now like to move on to the request of the mayor to place the police and fire millage on the ballot. As we all recall, this was a temporary measure set as the effects of the housing crisis were felt on city revenues as a temporary measure to avoid having to make a decision to cut those services. Property tax revenues have recovered, even adjusted for inflation. And if they have not, certainly the millage does not need to be renewed in its full amount. There's no analysis in the e-packet of why that needs to remain renewed at the same rate. Logic would dictate with the recovery in property tax revenue, if that millage was still needed, then it should be at a reduced rate. I asked this council to send this back to the mayor or table it until there can be more discussion on why that rate at that level is appropriate. We just got our tax assessments. Many of us know our tax bills are going up. Fine, good services cost money, but that implores that this item be examined in greater detail. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Chris Aiello. Sure. Aaron Geyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the indulgence. My name is Aaron Geyer, and I'm an attorney, and I've been licensed for almost 40 years.
Please speak in the mic, please.
Thought I was. So I'm here to discuss item 12D, and that is your first reading. And I applaud the panel because essentially you are falling in line, if so to speak, with what's going on in Centerline, what's going on in Roseville, what's going on in Madison Heights, what's going on in Royal Oak, what's going on in Detroit. It's all over around us. I understand that this body on numerous occasions attempted to have an ordinance that was met with extraordinary resistance from those that didn't win. It's been up and down the Supreme Court twice. It's been up and down the Court of Appeals twice. And so, yes, this is the logical way to do this. Now, if we look at Chapter 19.5, which is your marijuana ordinance, it's broken into 17 subcategories, of which only 3 are being requested for first reading. 19.5-7, which deals with definitions, 19.5-12, which deals with prohibitions, and 19.5-16, which deals with municipal licenses. If the panel is inclined to go to a second reading, I would ask that we also look at 19.5-15, which deals with establishments. Because if we look in E is what regulates provisioning centers and retail establishments. And if we look at the hours of operation allowable by a marijuana facility would be from 8:30 in the morning until 8 o'clock at night. That makes no sense. And that is not in line with what our neighbors are doing. And so I would urge the panel to adopt a Thursday through Sunday until midnight, with a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Sunday. And we can even start at 10 o'clock instead of starting at 8:30. Within the provisions that are being reviewed tonight is 19.516. The first one, which is B2, simply says that the application shall be on a form to be provided. I'd like a little better clarification of when that form will actually be available. Likewise, if it's denied, we would like a time frame for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Chris Aiello.
Good evening, Chris Aiello, 32411 Mound Road, Warren, Michigan. I've been an attorney there for a long time. And so Aaron Geyer stole my thunder. I've been an attorney in the cannabis industry since 2015, and I help pre-qualified entities obtain licensing throughout the state of Michigan, all the way from Traverse City to Luna Pier, all the way from Niles to East Point. Last week, one of my clients won a license in East Point. It only took 3 years, but they got it finally. And East Point allowed the stores to remain open until midnight for a competitive purpose to help them to work close and hand with the city and give them a little more of a competitive edge on the cities that surround that city, since it is, as a young lady over here testified, a rather competitive market at this point. But arguably, you know, I don't think local municipalities have much desire to intrude on any business's hours of opportunities in any type of business, whether it's 24-hour gas station or a party store or whatever it might be, to some degree. And so I think you're all familiar with the turmoil that surrounds this ordinance, and that where we've started and where we're ended, and I've participated from day one in all of these lawsuits on behalf of a number of entities, and where we're arrived at today. And so we're asking for some cooperation on that issue. The last issue that I had read was exactly what Mr. Geyer pointed out, and we have been involved, unfortunately, with litigation from 19 and 20 and 21, where the ordinance was enacted, but then the applications didn't come out. A month later, 2 months later, 3 months later, no applications. So mandamus actions happened, and that was ugly. And that's not one community, it's happened everywhere. So we respectfully request a reasonable period of time after the enactment of the ordinance, if it gets that far, to read what's required inside of your ordinance, as it has particularities about certain forms that the city must tender over to the applicants, and there's a whole bunch that need to be filled out. So not only should that be a reasonable period of time, but once an application has been submitted, which we've been involved in litigation on that, how long does it take? How long should it be? What's a reasonable period of time for a city to approve an application, especially an application under your law, which is a zoning-based application? And then it's filled in with some criteria that arguably really is the domain and province, and you know, it's sort of state law preempts a lot of the requirements within the city of Warren's proposed ordinance. But and then a reasonable period of time to deny or approve the application. So
You're at time.
trust
Thank
me,
you.
on behalf of a lot of entities, they
You're
want
at
to thank
time.
you for getting this.
Thank you. Next is Mark Abraham.
Thank you. My name is Mark Abraham, address 24649 Mound Road, Warren. I'm here just to say, very simple, I'm not an attorney, okay, so your first non-attorney in a little bit here. I'm just here to say thank you. Thank you to the board for at least bringing this to this point. I know the whole story on this. Why do I know it? Because if you ever wondered, as the board members of our great city, who the first person to ever get a cannabis license is, you're looking at him. I got the first license many, many years ago. Been working so hard to get to this point tonight. So I'm here to say thank you. Thank you for getting it to this point. I don't know how you're going to vote. I certainly hope that we get this past the finish line. It's way overdue. And the only other thing that I want to make mention to, and I'm not really making mention to the board members because God knows you guys know this, but to everybody, everyone in this audience, if you take a line and you draw it all the way around the city of Warren, if you sit here and you think about it and go, oh boy, we don't have a provisioning center inside of that square or rectangle. That's not true. We have 15 licenses in the belly of our city, 15 of them, and they're in a little place called Centerline, where they've been getting all sorts of revenue for all this time. Inside of the middle of our city, there are 15 provisioning licenses that are already there. So I don't want anybody, and I'm praying and hoping that nobody on our board has any hesitation to move forward with this rule. We have a much bigger city. We have a much bigger opportunity. It's policed very well. Our police department, as has been said so many times, is terrific. Thank you for getting to this point today, and I really hope that you vote to move this forward. It's time. Thank you.
Thank you. That is the end of audience. Mr. Secretary, next item.
Number 9, announcements. A, resolution recognizing the month of March as Social Work Month. Is there a representative here for that group? Maybe Stephanie Thornton could step up to the podium.
Hello, good evening. My name is Stephanie Thornton. I am the MSW student representative for NASW Michigan chapter, and I'm here to accept any resolution on the proclamation submitted.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll go ahead with the resolution. Whereas people enter the social work profession because they care about helping to improve the welfare of people, communities, and our nation, and whereas this year's Social Work Month theme, Social Work Compassion and Action, embodies the fact that social workers go through years of education and training so they have the skills to transform their care for others into positive action and results. And whereas social workers follow a code of ethics which sets as the primary mission of the social work profession the enhancement of human well-being and meeting the basic human needs of all people, with particular attention to the needs of those who are vulnerable, oppressed, and living in poverty. Whereas social workers work in all parts of our society, helping people, family, and communities secure services and policies they need to thrive. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Warren recognizes the numerous contributions made by America's social workers and proclaim this month of March 2025 as National Social Work Month. Motion to approve.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Support Lafferty.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Hold on, tell her to come back.
You can come back up. He's going to give you the resolution.
Madam President, if it's a resolution, don't we need to do a roll call vote even on an issue like this?
No.
No? Oh, okay.
Just follow up, resolution declared adopted on this 11th day of March 2025.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Mr. Lafferty has, I have one.
Somebody else.
I will go in advance. I, along with Mr. Mazzarelli, who helped me create a volunteer match program called Isabel's Angels, which is named after a resident in our community who really struggled to have her lawn mowed. She was in her 90s. And so my father-in-law, bless his heart, mows her lawn before he mows my lawn every week in the summer months. And I realized throughout that, but also in door knocking and talking to the community, that there are so many people who need help with pulling weeds or raking their leaves, lawn mowing, weed whipping, things that they're just not able to do. And so I have on my Facebook, but also via email, is a Google form where folks can fill out information, whether they want to volunteer or if they are in need of some type of services. And we will do our best to match folks with support from a community member and figure out the best way of helping make sure that they don't get citations from the city and that they also are able to keep their home tidy and neat. So if anyone is interested, please feel free to email me, angela@cityofwarren.org, and thank you, Dave, for your help in putting this together. Mr. Lafferty.
Thank you, Madam President. As always, I'd like to recognize the work that the Warren Civic Theater is doing and promote their upcoming shows. This is one of the rare times where I say they are putting on a program and none of you can come. All of their shows for Frozen Junior are completely sold out next week in the auditorium. It's good and it's bad. Apparently with Disney Productions, there is a strict enforced limitation on the number of people that can attend those shows. And so the audience is limited and all of those shows are sold out. So congratulations to our Warren Civic Theater, our young performers and future Hollywood stars on what should be an epic performance here on this stage next weekend. Madam Chair, I'd like to ask to suspend the rules for this next item. We have a member in the audience. His name is Mr. Charles Williams. He is a neighbor of mine, and not only is he an outstanding neighbor, always willing to help out, he is an involved member of our community. He's a staunch supporter of our police, a chaplain, and an inventive entrepreneur. When he is not developing new machines in his workshop, he is an advocate for vocational education and working with and mentoring our youth. His inventions have also been seen rolling through the neighborhood as he seeks to provide police departments with mobility options for policing. Mr. Williams was most recently awarded at Autorama for these inventions, and I'd like give him the opportunity to show off the award that he received and tell us a little bit about it. Motion to suspend the rules.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Rules are suspended for a moment.
Thank you, Council. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is, again, Charles Williams. I am the COO of a small business in the city of Warren, Michigan. It's called Thai Yucca, which stands for Teen Accomplishments. We are here in the city of Warren. We're building custom quads. The quads were specifically designed for the police department, the police department, security guard, General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler, so that they can have mobility on their premises to keep the cars from being stolen. We have equipped them to the point that they have sirens and everything else on them, all right? So we are here in our community, and we want to be a blessing to our young people. The name of the business, again, is called Thai Yucca, Teen Accomplishments. We're doing everything we can to get our young people involved in the engineering and automotive technology with welding, electrical, wiring, painting, and everything such as that. And it's been a challenge, but our young people have did everything they could to make sure that this is going to help them in the future. So we had an opportunity last week to be involved in the Autorama. First time in the Autorama. We came in 3rd place in the Autorama. Out of 155 entries or more, we came in 3rd place. And we have both of our plaques and with both of our our trophies here. And trust you me, our young people that had hands-on were extremely excited, all the way from Oakland County Community College all the way down. We interviewed about maybe 15,000 young people there, and they all are on board. Now, I want to say this openly. Warren, Detroit wants them, but they were born here in Warren. They were birthed here in Warren, and I will do everything I can to try to keep them birthed right here. So I'm going to need council to help us, and I appreciate everybody, and thank you so very kindly for letting me stand here. I'm nervous, but thank you so very kindly.
Congratulations, Mr. Williams. And I will ask for a resolution on behalf of council for next meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other announcements? Okay, hearing and seeing none. Next item, Mr. Secretary.
11A, request of Magna Health Management LLC located at 21445 Hoover for a 60-day extension of adult use license. Motion to approve.
Support Lafferty.
Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, I will call the question. Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
11B, request of DN Warren LLC located at 12525 East 9 Mile Road for a 60-day extension of MRTMA adult use license. Motion to approve.
Support Lafferty.
Discussion? Hearing and seeing none, I will call the question. Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
11C, request of Boxer Enterprises located at 23640 Pinewood for a 60-day extension of adult use license. Motion to approve.
Support Lafferty.
Discussion? Hearing and seeing none, I will call the question. Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
12, council business. 12A, consideration and adoption of a resolution approving proposed settlement in the matter of Chastity Evans versus Progressive Michigan Insurance Company, Jimmy Rodriguez, City of Warren, Jimmy Brown, Tristan Lee Hayner, and Terrace Trucking LLC, WCCC, case number 2024-003-945-NI, Honorable Susan L. Hubbard. Motion to approve settlement on this matter pursuant to the terms discussed in closed session, March 3rd, 2025.
Support Lafferty.
Dwyer in motion, support Lafferty. Call the question. Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
12B, consideration and adoption of a resolution approving proposed settlement in the matter of Eric Brown versus Tufail Ahmed, United States District Court, Eastern District of Michigan, case number 223-CV-10415-FKB-KGA. Motion to approve settlement on this matter pursuant to the terms discussed in closed session, March 3rd, 2025.
Support Lafferty.
Call the question. Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
12C, consideration and adoption of a resolution approving proposed settlement in the matter of Anisha Foster versus City of Warren, case number 24-CV-11513. Motion to approve settlement on this matter pursuant to the terms discussed in closed session, March 3rd, 2025.
Support Lafferty.
Support Lafferty. Call the question. Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Let's see, Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
12D, an ordinance to amend Chapter 19.5 of the Code of Ordinances entitled Marijuana, Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, Operations, Michigan Regulation and Taxation of Marijuana Act, Establishments, Personal Recreational Marijuana Adult Use, and Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act, Facilities. This will be the first reading.
Motion to approve with discussion.
Support.
Support McGee. Discussion. Mr. Lafferty?
Thank you, Madam President. I'd first like to turn the chair over to Mr. Schroeder for a summarized explanation.
Thank you, Madam President and Councilmember Lafferty. This draft ordinance, first of all, thank you to Ms. Michaels from the City Attorney's Office for putting this together and sending it over to the Council Office for consideration. There are three things being considered in this first reading of a proposed amendment to our marijuana ordinances in the city. The first issue is the City Council would no longer vote on extensions of marijuana renewal applications. We just saw on tonight's agenda, the council had to consider 3 facilities that were seeking a 60-day extension of their license that is under consideration. This was put in the ordinance originally in 2019, where council members at the time wanted to have their approval before an extension could be granted. This would eliminate that and replace it by giving the building division to grant a one-time 60-day extension, provided that the failure to renew the license by the expiration date are factors beyond the control of the applicant. We've seen in the past where it's something out of their control. It might be issues at the building department, maybe scheduling an inspection, whatever that happens to be. But if the applicant is at fault and they're just not filing their paperwork on time, or they're behind, or they don't pay the fine or the fee, the license fee or whatever that is, they will not be eligible for an extension. But it's going to take that off the council agenda and make it an administrative decision, which is the case in almost every municipality. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, under appeals of licenses, We had a matter that was headed toward council in January. It was going to be a 90-minute hearing, maybe even longer. The council appointed Councilmember Lafferty to sit and meet with the applicant, and it was a dispute over some building and construction code requirements. The applicant for renewal, the city found that they were in violation of some of the mechanical and fire code requirements and didn't renew it. The applicant claimed that they were grandfathered in, that didn't apply to them. And it ultimately came down to interpreting the state construction code and the mechanical codes. And we discovered that the city has a construction board of appeals. State law allows for a construction board of appeals where it consists of 5 professionals, somebody who's a mechanical expert, plumbing expert, electrical expert, and so forth, even an architect. So those experts are the appeal board for those issues. So if there's a renewal issue, if someone's license isn't renewed or granted because they're not following the construction code, allegedly, then they will appeal to the Construction Board of Appeals. The City Council would not be hearing construction-related appeals. And really, council shouldn't be deciding the finer points of the mechanical code about what's safe and what's not safe. That should be to the experts. So that's the second. And finally, probably the amendment that's generating the most interest, to save the best for last, is the adult use retail licenses. Elimination of the Marijuana Review Committee is the first thing. There was a Marijuana Review Committee created in the 2019 ordinances, and the city attorney was on there, then city council president was on the committee, and this committee had closed door meetings, and they were interviewing applicants, and they were deciding who was getting a license and who wasn't getting a license in these closed door meetings. And we heard earlier, this thing went to the Supreme Court twice, the Court of Appeals twice, it's at the Circuit Court for the 3rd time. This thing has bounced up and down our court system. It has cost the city taxpayers over $500,000, probably over $1 million when you count the insurance fees that insurance companies paying law firm to defend the city on this. And ultimately, the Supreme Court said these closed-door meetings violated the Open Meetings Act. They weren't held in public, and they were making these decisions and interviewing people and deciding who gets a license and who didn't. And at that time, now we hear the industry is suffering a little bit, but at that time, these were considered to be very valuable licenses, and everybody who applied really wanted one, and they were trying hard to get one, but the closed-door meeting was a no-go according to the Supreme Court. And so it's worth mentioning that nobody on this dais was part of that decision. This is 2 councils ago. This is how long this litigation's been going on, 2 councils ago. So this council inherited that, and obviously this council has a duty to try to deal with it. There are over 20 parties in this case, when you include the plaintiffs, the interveners, and to try to get everybody on the same page is the proverbial herding cats, too many cooks in the kitchen. If we can't get everybody to agree, then we're not going to be able to dismiss the lawsuit. There's still going to be parties remaining, and we're going to be fighting over those issues. It's been very difficult. So the first thing is elimination of this marijuana committee. The second thing is adult use retail was opted in by the prior council, but they set the number at 0 while the litigation was pending. This would remove the 0 number and make it an unlimited amount, but it's not unlimited because it's dependent on the zoning ordinance. Okay, so a zoning ordinance was passed in 2019 that severely restricts where marijuana facilities can be located in the city. First of all, they can only be in industrial zones or C3, which is the most intense commercial zone. They need to be 1,000 feet from a school, 500 feet from any residential property, 500 feet from a park, a religious institution, and daycare, and I think there's another one. But there's a map. The council has the map. These facilities go all the way from 14 in Van Dyke, 14 in DeQuinder. There's some zones that are allowed there, all the way to the southeast section of the city in industrial zones. And so the council's aware of these locations where they can be located. This is no different than in 2019 when the prior council and the prior planning commission had 2 public hearings on the zoning ordinance about where these facilities could be located. So 2 public hearings were held, and they published the map of where these can be located. So when we say unlimited, there's actually what we call a soft cap in these locations. The reason for this is after spending hours and countless dollars trying to resolve these lawsuits, it seemed like the only way to resolve it was to move forward and do this. If you look at other communities that have not been sued, a lot of cities have been sued over marijuana because they've set up a process where winners and losers are picked, and then the losers feel like something went wrong, and all they have to do is file a lawsuit and find one little thing, and sometimes a big thing, that didn't go right, and the whole thing gets thrown out. And then these parties want their legal fees paid, they want damages, they want all sorts of restitution. So in this particular case, going to unlimited, using zoning restrictions to limit where they can be located, no community has been successfully sued by doing it this way, because it takes out that political element or that human element of I am on the committee, or I am the one who's going to pick the winners and losers, and you have to come to me to get a license, and you need my approval. You take that element out of it, you take out that discretionary aspect of it, then it really eliminates the ability to file a successful lawsuit. So again, this isn't promising anything to anybody in the current litigation, but they all have a location that fit the zoning ordinance from 2019. So the ordinance is not going to change any of the zoning provisions, and applicants still must pass a background check by the state cannabis regulatory agency. They cannot have any default or taxes owed to the city. They cannot have property maintenance violations, and they must meet the fire code. And the market will decide how many dispensaries will exist. We know that almost all of the surrounding communities have a number of them, including, I think Centerline has 10. Roseville has a number. East Point, Detroit has 70, 80. Madison Heights has a number of them. So in reality, in talking to experts in the industry, the original number of 15 probably won't be met. I mean, again, that's not for sure. Who knows what the future brings, but we're trying to get out of this litigation, put an end to it, and the 7 figures in legal fees that it has cost various parties. This doesn't even count what it cost the 15 interveners and the 12-plus plaintiffs in the case. This is just what it cost the city. So this was run through the city attorney's office. I know Ms. Michaels, I think Ms. Michaels is here. Hope she's not hiding, but I don't see her. But she's on board with this, the city attorney's office, and Ms. Pike, who has represented the city, Andrea Pike, who's represented the city since I think 2020 on this case, and has been up and down our court system with this. You know, in a vacuum, is this what we'd want to do? No. Is this the most ideal thing? No. But this council has inherited a very big mess, and looking for a way out of it. This is one way to do it, and so certainly we can answer any questions. Thank you.
Madam President.
Mr. Lafferty.
Thank you. So this is, and thank you, Mr. Schroeder, for your guidance throughout this entire process. This is not a new process. This is not a new conversation, but I do want to provide some clarification of a few comments tonight that this item was sprung without notice. Now, the act of placing the item on the agenda is the notice, and the first reading begins the process of notifying the public that we are taking up an ordinance with the intent to modify it. And this is in addition to the public hearings that have already been held, as Mr. Schroeder indicated, and fully preserving those zoning maps and locations as were discussed in those public hearings. A perspective I wanted to offer is the difference in one present economic characteristic compared to that of 2018. Now, 7 years ago, how many marijuana businesses existed within the borders of our neighboring cities? From 0 to a few, today there are dozens. Now, I contend that the desire to open in Warren may not be as hotly contested and desired as it once was. Now, with that said, This council needs to depart from outdated arguments and examine the facts as they are today. They have changed. Now, if you said unlimited 5-6 years ago, we would have had 100 applicants breaking down the door at City Hall for a license. Today, can we say that same thing? Now, if I were a business owner looking to open a new shop, I would be looking next door to see how many of my neighbors I have and then weigh the market. And the bottom line is the hype cycle for this issue is long past. And for those that might be thinking the worst case scenario because the ordinance revision uses the term unlimited, that does not infer that the city will be inundated with a shop on every block. Now, what it does mean is that these businesses will be limited not only by the restrictions that Mr. Schroeder referred to, but I also believe that business owners will be practicing self-limiting as they consider whether or not their enterprise is strong enough to compete in an already well-established business environment with our neighboring communities. For those that do choose to open, time and the economy will determine who are the strongest to survive. Now, the additional changes, especially transitioning the license management from a legislative item to an administrative item, is not only wise, it's the most effective measure to ensure that politics no longer have a role in gaming the system. Folks, that's why we're here today, talking about this. From where we sit, the council establishes policy, as is our role in all manners regarding the operation of the city. Now, I don't like marijuana, I don't smoke it, and I can't stand the smell. What I dislike even more is missing out on the taxable revenue as I watch people who live here leave Warren and spend their money in other cities. Now, this is a quality first draft of the new ordinances. The changes, the cooperative effort of the city attorney, Ms. Pike, Mr. Schroeder, are very well done, and is noted, rooted in solid legal footing. Thank you to your expertise. Now, we have the benefit of 20/20 vision now to avoid the mistakes of the past and make a business decision. That's what this is. It's a business decision to turn this into a viable revenue stream. Thank you.
Madam President?
Mr. Noonan.
Yeah, so I believe one of our grow facilities that was manufacturing different products has already shut down or is getting ready to because they weren't really financially viable without without the revenue of adult use and restrictions on how many marijuana locations I think were in the city. It is self-limiting to a large degree. Also, I want to point out that I used to, but I no longer smoke marijuana. I don't like the smell. Actually, it could lead me to go off course, even smelling it. So I would appreciate it if people wouldn't smoke it while they're driving. It is illegal, and I'd be in favor of our police enforcing that. So just to give you another warning. But the state, there was a referendum, the people put it on a ballot, the state is making adult use legal, and we've inherited this situation, basically this mess, and we're doing the best we can to sort it out. I support this move that we're making tonight. I haven't heard any good arguments to not. I am curious about fine-tuning it, since apparently we're going to allow theoretically unlimited, but in actuality quite limited adult use establishments to be set up. If it's more competitive with the surrounding cities, to have them stay open sometime until midnight or something. It seems like there should be some way in our ordinance for that to be worked out, and that might change for some reason over time. It'd be nice if we could do that without actually having to change the whole ordinance or like, you know, like bring this all up for reconsideration all over again. Maybe the parts of the administration that will be guiding the process of people getting licensed could come to terms with hours of operation, or I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that, but I did hear that some people were interested in that, and it seemed like a possibly reasonable thing, especially neighbors might like it if they opened up at 10 instead of 8:30 in the morning. Just saying. Anyway, what else? Yeah, that's about it. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing and seeing none, I will call the question. Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
Next item, correspondence from the mayor, 13A. Request of the police department for an increase in budgeted revenues and appropriations in the amount of $225,000 to account for receipt of a grant from the state of Michigan's Michigan Commission on Law Enforcement Standards, consideration and adoption of a resolution. Motion to approve.
Support Lafferty.
Discussion, anyone? Hearing and seeing none, I will call the question. Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
13B, request of the city controller to establish a bank account, fund, and budget for the Land Bank Authority. Consideration and adoption of a resolution. Motion to approve.
Support Lafferty.
Discussion. Hearing and seeing none, I will call the question. Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
13C, request to approve Land Bank Authority startup funding in the amount of $25,000, which will be reimbursed to the general fund. Consideration and adoption of a resolution. Motion to approve.
Support Lafferty.
Discussion? Hearing and seeing none, I will call the question. Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
13D, proposed resolution to authorize ballot proposal to renew levy of 4.6083 mils for police and fire safety protection millage, and proposed resolution to hold a special election in conjunction with the state primary election on August 5th, 2025. Consideration and adoption of a resolution. Motion to approve.
Support Lafferty. Point of order, Madam Chair. This item has two resolutions and will require two separate votes. There's a resolution, the first resolution is for the renewal language, the second is to authorize the special election.
Thank you. Okay, so the first one is for the ballot proposal resolution. Okay. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, I will call the question. Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. 13, Part 2, Mr. Dwyer.
Part 2 is the proposed resolution to authorize ballot proposal to renew levy of 4.6083 mils for police and fire safety protection millage.
Support, motion to approve.
Support.
Thank you. Discussion?
Madam Chair, through the chair to Mr. Schroeder, in the resolution, it states that there may be small changes pursuant to review by the governor and the attorney general. How does that, if you could comment, how does that generally work?
This is, essentially, it's a city charter amendment, so it follows and tracks the process of a charter amendment. So the state statute requires that any proposed charter amendment must be approved by the governor, and the governor relies on the Attorney General's office to review the language and advise whether or not it should go on the ballot. In reality, the Attorney General's office from time to time will find some minor issues with this, and it can come back and the council can amend that language. I don't anticipate any problem here. The city attorney's office has been doing these millage charter amendments for decades, but it has to track that process of a charter amendment. So ultimately, the governor has to approve language for a charter amendment that comes from the council.
So to clarify, if there's a material change to the amendment, similar to others that we've done, it would have to come back to us for approval.
Yeah, material change meaning, you know, I mean, I can't imagine they would change the levy, the amount of the levy or anything like that. I can't anticipate any material change. There may be a slight change in wording or something that they're requesting. I'm sure that council will be notified, but at the end of the day, anything material would come back to council. The statute says if they object to it, that it comes back to council for reconsideration, if there's any objection from the governor or the attorney general. But I wouldn't anticipate that.
Okay, thank you. And Madam Chair, through the chair to Mr. Fox, please.
Good evening, Madam President, council members.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Thank you. I know you came all the way over here. I had just a couple of questions, actually pretty much one. I was comparing the previous fiscal year budget where we had a 4.6343 with a levy of 19,800,000 and change, and this is at 4.6083, 0.026 difference in the negative, yet we're raising, expected to levy 21.2 million. So, and I've seen in the 10-year tax and levies that it has historically trended downward.
Correct.
And this is due to Headley and the adjustments due to the assessments every year, correct?
That is correct. So each year, the city assessor addresses the Headley amendment, and whatever that levy is, this levy started at 4.9 mills. And so every year since the millage got approved, it's been reduced because of Headley. And today we're at 4.6083. And the reason why the additional amount is because of the actual taxable value has increased.
All right. The math makes sense then. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
I have no other questions.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Can I ask my colleagues to move their phones away from the microphone? We're getting some disruption. Okay. No other discussion. I will call the question. Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. McGee? Yes. Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
13E, recommendation of the RFP-W-21278 to award broker services for a 2-year period to Sunflower Realty, LLC, at a commission rate of 3%. Consideration and adoption of a resolution. Motion to approve.
Support Lafferty.
Discussion? Hearing and seeing none, I'll call the question. Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Yes.
Ms. McGee? Yes. Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
13F, request to approve an advisory committee for the use of DDA city buildings and to appoint one member of the council to serve on the committee. Motion to approve, and we need to nominate a council member.
Support Lafferty.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Boyke?
I would like to nominate Councilman Lafferty to serve on this committee.
Do you accept that?
I will accept.
Support.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, Mr. Lafferty.
Oh, thank you.
Next item.
13G, request to approve a bond council review panel and to appoint one member of the council to serve on the panel. Motion to approve, and we need to nominate a council member.
Support Lafferty.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Boyke.
make a resolution to nominate Councilwoman Mindy Moore to serve on this panel.
Support anyone?
Support.
Okay. Any other nominations? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, congrats, Ms. Moore. Next item.
13H, proposed ordinance amendment to the nuisance ordinance, Article 2, noxious weeds and rubbish, Chapter 38. This is the second reading. Motion to approve.
Support Lafferty.
Any discussion?
Yes, please.
Mr. Noonan.
I was wondering if David would be willing to come forward and help us to distinguish between this and the tree ordinance that we passed recently, and where one would fit in and where the other one would take off. Thank you, Mr. Mazzarelli.
One's about trees and one's about cutting grass. One's about trees and the other one's about cutting grass.
Oh, okay.
So this is about cutting grass, which is our biggest blight problem that we have in the city and consumes most of my inspectors' times when they're out. We've modeled this after several of our surrounding cities and what they do. I think it's a best path forward. It limits the time, or the inspector will come out and tag the property whether the grass is over 6 inches tall. They have the following day to cut their grass, then it'll be re-inspected. If it's not cut at that time, we will cut it for them.
So the tree and vegetation ordinance also mentioned native plant gardens.
Those will be the ones that the people will register, yes.
Okay. I believe that we don't have to register.
Oh, that's right, we did change that, I'm sorry.
And so I'm hoping that the crews that go out will be able to distinguish.
Yes, absolutely, these guys are well-trained.
Okay. I'm looking forward to that, and also if I'm out of order, then I
Nope, not at
look
all.
forward to getting a note.
Nope, not at all.
Okay. No, I mean, like, if my yard is out of order.
Oh, yeah. I'll make sure your grass is cut.
Are black-eyed Susans really not native, ever?
Technically, your lawn isn't a native plant. Our grass is not native to Michigan. Native grasses in Michigan
Oh,
are
yeah,
tall grasses. So, I
the
mean,
grasses aren't native.
It's, it is what it is. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why we wrote it the specific way we did. So, I mean, we're not gonna cut down anybody's butterfly garden. We're going to come make sure that your grasses are cut and that
Yeah.
don't have a whole lawn full
Right.
of dandelions.
My native echinacea are convinced they're native. And they're saying, I came after them, so they have more of a right to be here than I do. Anyway, hey, thank you so much for helping to clarify that.
Yes, sir.
I yield.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing and seeing none, I will call the question. Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Boyke?
Yes.
Mr. Noonan?
Of course.
Ms. McGee?
Yes.
Rogan C. is a yes. Motion carries. Next item.
13I, which was formerly 4J, proposed resolution providing public notice of intent to sell vacant tax-reverted properties at 11203 and 11211 Rivard, Warren, Michigan, parcel ID numbers 13-34-454-012 and 13-34-454-013 for $1,000, which is $500 each, approving sale following 30-day notice period and accepting grant of easement rights. Consideration and adoption of a resolution. Motion to approve.
Support Lafferty.
So I wanted this item pulled off the consent. If you review some of the backup, both pieces are being sold to a private entity for $500 each, and they're both assessed at $6,139, so over $12,000. And there's no public good or, use for the property, so I'm not comfortable selling them for $1,000. I'd be happy to sell them for what they're assessed for, but that is why I'm pulling these off of the consent.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Lafferty.
are you asking to have a motion made to, if you want to pass the gavel and make a motion, you can make a motion to substitute my approval motion, and we can take a vote on that.
Make a motion to table the item in directing the Economic Development Department to
Renegotiate?
thank you, yes. I was gonna say rebid, but it's not rebidding. Renegotiate the price.
Support.
Madam President, could I discuss also? No?
A motion to table stops only.
Okay.
So I made a motion to table. I will suspend it
Oh.
for a moment so that Mr. Noonan can speak, but you're in charge.
Oh, sorry.
Got it. So no discussion.
No
You have to call the
discussion.
question.
Okay.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Call the question.
Call the question?
I'm lost.
I can't make, as president, I can't make a motion
Right.
when I have the gavel, so I have to pass the gavel to the vice president. The motion is to table, which stops discussion.
Okay.
So Mel has to call the question.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
To take votes.
For votes?
Turn your mic on.
My mic was off.
Starts with Ms. Rogency and then Mr. Dwyer.
Rogency?
Yes, to table.
Yes, the
Dwyer.
table. Noonan?
Then
Noonan?
Dwyer.
No, Dwyer first.
Dwyer?
Yes to table.
Lafferty?
Yes to table.
McGee, yes. Moore is not here, so it's absent, and Boyke,
Yes to table.
And me?
and Day,
No, Mr.
Me?
Noonan.
Mr. Noonan.
No problem. Yeah.
No, are you tabling?
Oh,
you
yes,
tabling?
yes to
Yes.
table.
Okay,
And McGee, yes, the table. Okay.
motion, items tabled.
All items tabled.
Yeah. Did Nikki vote?
Yeah.
Did she
I
call
was
something?
confused.
You weren't
Next
expecting
item.
14, audience participation, general topics.
Members of the audience who would like to address council this evening may do so by filling out an audience form located on the right side of the stage. If you are new, make sure that you have written your name, it looks like everyone has, name and address on the form. You have 3 minutes, there's a clock up front, and this is for general topics. First is Ray Deloach.
Good evening, council. I sent you guys some pamphlets to give an update, to give you a little insight on what's going on over at the shelter on East 9 Mile at 7012. We came up with a pamphlet to show the population and the percentage of who, what, when, and where that comes into our city, and what's in our city as far as other agencies and other programs. If you look at the front page of the pamphlet that I gave you, just a printout for this month past, the increase of homelessness in our city went up to about 30%. Since I've been open, since people have found out where we are and where we're located, people have been being transferred from Flint, Pontiac, Garden City, Livonia, Behavior Center in Michigan, Detroit Receiving Crisis Center, a couple from the Macomb County Jail. We have housed them. The day program population, as you can see, most of the people we assist and take care of during the daytime of that population is Matson Trinity, that's located in our city temporarily as far as the warming season. For the last few weeks, it has increased with the help of McDonald's, Burger King, and the library on Van Dyke. I have staff going around to each one of those facilities making sure that anyone that is registered at my building return to the building for the daytime and for the nighttime. Right now, for our sleeping, as you look at the bottom of that sheet, that it has went up to 60%. 30 beds, right now I have empty. The rest are governed by those who have come in. There is no time frame for intake. You come knock on the door, we do not turn you away. I want to thank Warren Police Department for dropping off those who are in need to sleep at night and those who need it in recovery. I do have a relationship with McCrest to where if women and children come to our facility, for 72 hours they're there, and then we transfer them to a bed at McCrest and Mount Clemens. Recently, I want to thank Officer Moon of the Warren Police Department. The family of 5 that was homeless, he brought to our shelter, and we put that family into a hotel for the remainder of that weekend so they can move into their new home on the 1st of March. We had a lady that was dropped off to Trinity that they had not a bed for her that came all the way from Port Huron. She was trying to get back to Tennessee with her children and her family and seek recovery. We found out her story was true. Our organization put her on a Greyhound bus to a 24-hour women's shelter in Nashville, Tennessee. Right now, as far as the usage of the city, 6 calls to medical emergencies for diabetics and heart conditions, and 1 to Warren PD for...
You're at time, Mr. Deloach, I'm sorry.
I apologize.
I was listening intently. Thank you for the update.
Okay.
Next is Michael Polsky.
Thank you. This is basically just a thank you to Ms. McGee. Literally, after years of fighting with the last administration and the city council in the past, she has helped to clean up our neighborhood. There's a mechanic's place on the back. They literally park in our driveways. When we come home from work, we couldn't get into our own driveways. She's helped clean things up to the point where, I'd say, just a thank you. Somebody's actually done something for us after years, literally years. I would like to ask what she can do. We pull up and all of the businesses from the school there between down to 9 Mile and up, they park on the sidewalk or below the sidewalk. When we pull out to pull onto Ryan, we can't see traffic. Say, we've complained. I say, I don't know if there's anything anybody can do. The police have to be there at the time when they're there. I don't know how that works. If there's something anybody can do, we'd appreciate it. Other than that, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. McGee. Next is Lori Harris. Thank you. After that is Boyd Morrison.
Good evening. Good evening, Council, President and Council. I'm Boyd Morrison, and I just wanted to let you know that I'm a neighbor of Warren, and I come to speak specifically to lending my perspective on the cannabis topics, not just in Warren, but all over. As a council member spoke about his, excuse me, dislike for the smell. Other council members say he used to it, he don't know more, but it's still a smell. I just want to make sure in the decision from the federal to the state to the local level that we always consider the apartments and these rental units that people are living in. Some of these places have seniors, our most seasoned people in our community, and they have our little babies that's growing up in our community. And yet the smell that you both spoke about, council members, respectfully, is something that you smell when you walk into these particular buildings, which I think is a disrespect to those who don't smoke. I think council should make sure and ensure that in your language, whatever you propose and whatever you implement in your ordinances, that they have some type of offset or outside of the building for these people who want to engage in and marijuana smoking, cannabis smoking to be designated before a rental license is issued in these particular places because it impacts other people's lives. And the smell, you can be standing in the grocery line and people walk in and the smell is just so bad that you just make you feel bad. Just imagine those people that walk into those apartments and those things that live in those facilities, that what they smell on a regular basis is those who, I guess, engage in their right to smoke. So I just want council to make sure that you put that as your high priority to consider those people who don't smoke, and when they're involved in issuing rental, when you're involved in issuing rental license to those who live in those facilities. I just wanted to lift my voice up to that and say thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Next is Joel Vanderlinden.
Joel Vanlin, longtime Warren resident. I'm here to talk about the police officers and the staffing. But I want to talk about it in a different point of view, in a different way. One that I don't think none of you have really thought about. They're working 12-hour shifts. Being an ex-cop as I am, at the end of 8 hours, I was tired. Pistol gets a little heavy, my decision-making starts to slow. And from 8 hours to 12 hours, that's where you start making mistakes. And mistakes cost lives. But let's look at it at a different point of view. Let's look at it as the officer himself. Being young, 20, 21, 25, 12 hours probably not a big deal. But what does that officer look like after 25 years on the service? He looks like me. He's worn down, he's stressed out, he has health problems. Some on this council would say even mental problems. But you have to think about this officer's retiring after 25 years, and he spent, worse yet, all that 25 years working 12 hours. Does he miss his family? He probably missed his son's first ball game, his son's first hit, his daughter's dance recital, first communion. There's a variety of things that he'll never have the chance to recoup because the job had to come first. And what about his wife? The wife just has a baby. The husband comes home from work. 12 hours he spent. He needs time to decompress. He needs time to relax. He's not eating right, working 12 hours. She needs a break from the baby. And he's not there to give it to her. He's not. He comes home, he takes a shower, he irons his clothes, he goes to bed, he wakes up for dinner, and at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, he's back on the job. There's no release of emotion. There's no time with the children. There's no hugs for the wife. The wife hears something outside. Her husband's not there. The children are scared. Her husband's
You're at time,
not
Mr.
there
Vanderlinden.
to,
Have a good evening.
let me finish.
You're at time.
The husband's
Next item.
'15, council response to audience.
Mr. Vanderlinden, you need to sit down. You've used your 3 minutes of time. Have a good evening. Have a good evening. Council, Mr. Vanderlinden. Mr. Vanderlyn and I'm done. Please move on. Go ahead, Mr. Dwyer.
Through the chair, may I respond?
Council response to
Under
audience.
council response to audience. I understand what Mr. Vanderlinden is saying. I mean, I've been in law enforcement for almost 40 years, and 12-hour shifts are certainly not for everybody. I mean, in the years that I worked 12s, I really didn't mind it because what it did was it gives us in law enforcement an additional 71 days off a year. But as far as missing a lot of things with family and sporting events and things that the kids have done, it's really the nature of the beast. I mean, when we signed up for this, we're a 24/7 operation, and going in, I knew, and I think a lot of us know in law enforcement, that there's sacrifices that are going to have to be made. And I mean, there were lots of sacrifices that I made, but I knew that was part of the package. So I have addressed lengthy hours for officers in the past. Here, with us being now 24 officers short, that if officers are working extended amounts of hours, certainly it could lead to burnout and, you know, possibly maybe down the road jeopardize officer safety. But you also look at morale. I mean, we don't have forced overtime here, but we want to have upbeat morale. And right now, being 24 officers down and things dragging along, I mean, I know there's 4 in process that are going through the background right now, but we are just moving way, way too slow on all of this here in Warren. And we got to look out for the residents, and we got to look out for our officers when they're responding to runs with officer safety. Thank you.
Ms.
Madam
McGee.
Chair.
Thank you. Ms. McGee, then Mr. Boyke.
Thank you.
I wanted to thank Mr. Ray for Friends of the Father. Earlier this week, I came by to do a tour because I plan on doing a tour at all the homeless facilities, and it was a great tour. I appreciate what you're doing. I looked at your stats. One thing that is near and dear to my heart is workforce development, and you're doing training and development, and you really have helped them to get jobs. And I think that's highly important. You don't want them to stay in that situation, and you try to help them out of the situation into a home. And I remember while I was there, a gentleman walked in very excited because he had found him an apartment and found him a place, and appreciated your assistance. So I wanted to say thank you. I passed around some posters to make sure all the facilities receive, including nonprofit organizations. So if you're in the house, I do have those from United Way, where people can call 211 if they need some assistance and they don't know where to go. And we're in the middle of making sure that Warren, the city of Warren, is on their list for assistance when needed. We are all part of the human services that we need in Macomb County. So I thank you and I appreciate you.
Mr. Boyke, then Mr. Noonan.
Madam Chair, thank you. Getting back to the 12-hour shifts, I think what Mr. Vanderlyn was trying to suggest, it does take a lot of strain. Well, why are we in that position to work 12 hours? It's because we're 24 people short, probably another 6 to 8 that are on family medical leave or leave. We're over 30 people short. I proposed a resolution back in November. It was passed by everybody on this council, only to have the mayor say, you guys don't know what you're talking about. Well, I was a president of a union for many years in the police department. I handled arbitrations, labor law. I do that now in the job I'm in. I think I know enough. The resolution wasn't binding. She vetoed it. The mayor's office vetoed it. We overrode it. Again, everybody in the council voted for it. I guess the only next step is to prepare an ordinance, which I'm looking into, and take it out of the human resources hand. This has gone on too long already. All we hear is promises. Oh, we're hiring them. We're hiring them. I see more and more police officers retiring than we're hiring. And I think, you know, my heart goes out to the guys who are, you know, working those 12-hour shifts. I didn't have to wear a bulletproof vest like them. We didn't have them back then. I'd like to see how their back is after 25 years, you know, all the equipment. And they need time to relax, and they're not getting it. And that's all I got to say today.
Thank you. Mr. Noonan.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I am going to the Michigan Municipal League CapCon next week, and I thank the council's office for helping me to arrange the registration for that. And I'm looking forward to learning good things and also to networking for our city. I think it's an important thing to do. And when I was on the Centerland School Board, I had a chance to go to the National School Board Association twice, over 13 years. And also to go to the Michigan Association of School Boards annual meetings most years. I think there was one year that I missed, but there was a lot of training, and we took a lot of pride in how well trained our trustees were. And also because of that, because the leadership of the school board promoted our at least getting through the first level of training, which was 10 classes, we were consistently a platinum school board, where every member had been through the basic training on that. Anyway, I think it's good to go out, find out how, take classes there, and how to work better for our constituents, and work better with each other, work better with the administration, and if we have any particular problems that are on our minds, we get a chance to find out from other people who are dispassionate and non-biased what they would recommend. I've often found that that's been very helpful. Anyway, so I'm looking forward to doing that next week, and I'll even give a bit of a report if I get a chance. But I'll try not to keep this long. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Madam President,
Mr. Lafferty.
I realize I was remiss in recognizing the Warren Fire Department. They held the wild game dinner this
Delicious.
past weekend.
Yep.
And Councilman Dwyer, Noonan, Councilwoman McGee, and Councilman Boyke and I were there. There was a rumor that I was wearing jeans. I don't know where that came from. That never happens. But they raised $30,000 in a single evening. It was outstanding food and prizes and good visiting by everybody. And all of the proceeds, as I understand it, are being donated to our wounded officer, Nick Cott, who was also in attendance, was in great spirits, and loved visiting with people. I got to share just a few moments with him and wished him my best. So great to see him. Hope his condition improves. But well done by the Warren Fire Department, our first responders, everybody coming together for such an awesome event. One other item, there was a couple of comments regarding smell of the marijuana. And there are two types of the smell. One is from the grow operations. And grow operations are corporate grow operations are licensed within the city, and they are governed by our zoning department. They should be inspected on a regular basis. They are inspected on a regular basis, and if there is a smell coming from a grow operation, that is something that is reportable, and they have to take action to mitigate any smell coming from a grow. Now, a provisioning center, and much of what the ordinance that we did the first reading on tonight is much like a liquor store. You don't walk into a liquor store and smell alcohol. You don't smell marijuana in a provisioning center either. So the smells from grow operations, absolutely. We have rules about that, and those are enforced. Certainly want to keep on top of complaints and have those addressed. Mr. Morrison made a very good point about apartments multifamily units, landlords have the ability to set their own rules, and I think that our building department and our rental division should be working with them to encourage them to promote a healthy living environment for those residents that live there. A ban on smoking on those premises, especially those that are as awful as marijuana smells, can be banned on those premises. You have to maybe have designated smoking areas for those. My office building, there's a designated smokers area well away from the entrance so that you don't have to walk through that to get into your building. So food for thought, but those are certainly some of the other points that we either have ordinances on the books or ways to improve and strengthen them. Thank you.
Madam President, through the chair.
Mr. Dwyer.
To Mr. Schroeder, is there any state law right now that regulates the odor of marijuana in rentals in apartments? Is there anything out there?
Yeah, certainly the state, our legislature amended the law. It allows the landlord to ban marijuana on the premises. So they can put it in the rental contract and say, no consumption of marijuana on the premises. So they're able to do that. That was in order, some people have medical marijuana cards, and they wanted to prevent people from getting medical marijuana cards and saying, I'm taking my medicine and I have a right to do this. And the answer is no. You'll have to take your medicine somewhere else if it's in, but it has to be in the contract. So that's up to the landlords to do that.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Anything further? Next item.
16, adjournment. So moved.
Support McGee. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned.